Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Introduce myself. My name is NURFADILA. My NPM is 231000087. Now, I will be presentation about my analysis of the journal entitled Indirect Investor Protection, the Investment Ecosystem and its Legal Underpinnings. This is a journal data. This name is entitled Indirect Investment Protection, the Investment Ecosystem and its Legal Underpinnings. Penulis is Holger Spanger. Volume 14 is 1, 2022, page 17 to 79. Accreditas is Scopus Index. This is the ID from Scopus Index. Okay, law issue. The main legal issue addressed in this article concerns how indirect investor protection operates through market-based mechanism and legal institution beyond traditional direct investor protection rules, and whether those mechanisms can effectively safeguard investors' interests. The article questions the conventional view that investor protection depends solely on direct legal protections, such as shareholder rights, fiduciary duties, and disclosure regulation. Instead, it raised the legal issue of whether market competition, corporate governance, takeover markets, and shareholder activism can function as indirect form of investor protection within the broader investment ecosystem. More specifically, the legal issues examined include whether competitive market structures and takeover mechanisms can serve as instruments of investor protection, how legal and institutional frameworks support the effectiveness of these mechanisms, and whether indirect investor protection can complement or even substitute traditional regulatory protections. The article also addressed the legal risks that might arise when the investment ecosystem does not function effectively, particularly when weak market discipline, poor corporate governance, or failures in takeover markets undermine investor protection. From a competition law perspective, the article further raises the issue of whether competition and takeover regulation should be understood not only as market control mechanisms, but also as legal tools supporting investor protection and market efficiency. Temuan utama, the article finds that investor protection is supported not only by direct legal safeguards, but also by indirect mechanisms such as market competition, corporate governance, shareholder activism, and takeover markets, all of which form part of a broader investment ecosystem that promotes investor protection and market efficiency. Metode penelitian this article employs doctrinal legal research using a law and economics approach. a conceptual approach and analytical comparative legal analysis to examine indirect investor protection through market institution and legal mechanism. Critical analysis, the article makes a significant contribution to legal scholarship by expanding the concept of investor protection beyond conventional direct legal safeguards and placing it within a broader institutional and market framework. One of its major strengths lies in demonstrating that investor protection is not solely dependent on statutory right or regulatory enforcement, but it also shaped by market competition, corporate governance structures, and takeover mechanisms. This broader perspective over a more comprehensive understanding of how investor protection operates in practice. Another strength of the article is its interdisciplinary approach, particularly its integration of corporate law, securities regulation, and economic analysis. By adopting a law and economics perspective, the article successfully explains how market mechanisms might serve as indirect constraints on managerial opportunism and contribute to investor welfare. This approach enriches traditional legal analysis, which often focus only on formal legal rules. The discussion on takeover markets as a disciplinary mechanism is also particularly compelling. The article convincingly argues that the threat of acquisition can function as a governance tool that pressures management to act efficiently and in shareholders' interests. This argument broadens the understanding of takeover regulation, positioning it not merely as a corporate control issue but also as a component of investor protection. Nevertheless, several critical observations can be made. First, the article tends to place considerable confidence in the effectiveness of market-based mechanisms, arguably assuming that markets and governance structure operate efficiently under normal conditions. This assumption might be overly optimistic, particularly in market characterized by weak institutions, concentrated ownership, or regulatory shortcomings. Second, while the article provides a strong theoretical framework, it gives relatively limited attention to the possibility that market mechanisms themselves might fail. Competition, shareholder activists, or takeover markets do not always operate in ways that protect investors, and in some key circumstances, they might even generate instability or unequal outcomes. A deeper discussion of this limitation would have strengthened the analysis. Third, the article focused primarily on developed market structures, particularly those associated with advanced economies. This raises questions regarding the applicability of its arguments in emerging markets, where corporate governance system, enforcement institution, and competition structures may differ significantly. A comparative perspective would have enhanced the article's broader relevance. In addition, the article could have exchanged more critically with the relationship between indirect investor protection and regulatory intervention. While indirect mechanisms might complete legal regulation, they might not necessarily substitute for strong legal protection. This tension could have been explored more fully. Overall, the article provides a subtle and innovative contribution by showing that investor protection is embedded in, embedded in a wider investment ecosystem. In central insight that competition, governance, and takeover structures can function as direct, indirect forms of investor protection is both persuasive and relevant, although its arguments would be stronger with greater attention to market failures and comparative institutional limitation. Relevansi dengan RPS. This article is relevant to the RPS because it relates to competition law principle, mergers and acquisitions, market power law and economics, takeover regulation, and competition law enforcement, particularly in understanding how market competition and legal institutions contributed to investor protection and market efficiency. Kesimpulan, the article critical concludes that investor protection is shaped not only by direct legal regulation, but also by competition, governance, and takeover mechanism within the broader investment ecosystem. While this approach of an innovative framework is effective, depends on function, institution, and my face limitation where market mechanism fail. Thank you for the attention. Sorry, the link for journal in my berkas di PDF-nya Ibu ya. Terima kasih. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. I'm so sorry. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.